everyone, this is Christopher Salata, co-founder of Peace Accelerators, and I'm sitting with Captain Paul Watson, the founder of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society and captain of the fleet. I learned about Captain Paul Watson through Sharkwater, a documentary made by my friend Robbie Stewart, who was a environmental activist who passed away a few years ago filming his third documentary. In that documentary, you went after a shark finning vessel, used water cannons. And this was, tell us a little bit about this first.
We encountered a shark finning operation inside Guatemalan waters, and we got permission from the government of Guatemala to stop that operation, which we did, and nobody's hurt, nothing damaged. But the vessel got into Costa Rica before us and then made a complaint, and when I arrived I was charged with 8 counts of attempted murder based on the word of the fishermen. They didn't have any cameras, just their word. So we went into court and we had all that footage from the making of Sharkwater. So the court looked at the footage and dismissed the charges, and I was free to go. A week later they boarded me again and rearrested me, this time on 8 counts of assault. So once again we went back into court, and once again the charges were dismissed, and I was free to go and also given a clearance to leave Costa Rica. So I didn't think anything of that until 10 years had passed when I landed in Germany and found myself arrested by the Germans on an extradition request by Costa Rica on a charge of shipwreck endangerment, which was a bogus charge that they just set up after talking with the government of Japan, and that it was all politically motivated. So that set a whole series of issues and everything, which actually is now being resolved, because the new government of Costa Rica, the environment minister called me up 2 weeks ago to apologize and said that they're going to see that this is removed. The former president, his sister owned the largest fishing company in Costa Rica, so they have a vested interest in shark finning. So the long and the short of it, we expose their, the illegalities behind the government's position on this, and we won, but it's taken a long time.
Yeah. The reason I bring this up is that I think a lot of I wouldn't say the best activists, but the most influential activists, you have to start with positions that are often unpopular in the beginning, and that's the point, is that you're going after something that you know should be changed, almost from a moral, heart standpoint, and then over time it's almost like the public catches up later on.
Yeah, it's easy to campaign on something that everybody agrees on.
Yeah.
But it's much more difficult and more challenging to tackle something that you don't have that kind of support on. Martin Sheen once told me that about lost causes. He said losing causes are the only causes worth fighting for. And that's true. You just have to be willing to take on that challenge and not be deterred by criticism or opposition.
Yeah. Some of what I work on, I was a solar entrepreneur for years, and then about a year and a half ago I switched to peace activism. But our stance on peace activism is a little bit more maybe like Einstein related, where I'm a militant pacifist. I believe that some of the statistics I've looked at recently is the United States government has killed around 20 million people estimated since World War II. In Germany Germans killed about 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, just to kind of
I killed a lot more of that if you count the non-Jews.
Yes, good point. Good point. I guess the reason I'm activated to work on what I'm doing and feel that it's something that's very needed is what I'm looking at right now in the state of the planet is the way that we're using resources seems insane to me, especially as a nation and as a leading nation, in using so much of our resources for military defense when we are losing biodiversity at such a rapid rate. And just wanted to kind of ask some of your opinions a little bit on peace and a little bit on the allocation of resources really planet-wide and in nation states, and really what advice you would give to activists of all different kinds, because I think a lot of our generation really cares, but a lot of us aren't necessarily sure what the most efficient path of action might be.
Well, humans are ecologically insane is really the bottom line on this, and the reason we are is because our points of view are all anthropocentric. We no longer live in harmony with the natural world. We've decided that we're the only species that counts. If you look at every single religion, it places humans at the center of everything, even only we've only been on this planet for a relatively few seconds of its existence. But and that is that problem, that anthropocentric attitude is one that it motivates greed, it motivates selfishness, it motivates lack of empathy for all other living things. We can't have peace amongst human beings until we make peace with the planet. And if once we do that, then we're on the road to on the right direction.
Yeah. I've read some of your thoughts on that, and I know that you're a big proponent of biocentrism.
Yes.
And as far as I don't even know if the spiritual front would be correct, but Einstein and Alan Watts and some of my favorite philosophers believe in something called pantheism, which is a belief that all is divine, and the entire, not just humans, but all nature, and nature and God are one.
I think pantheism is moving in the right direction, but animals don't practice pantheism.
Yeah.
They I guess the Tao is probably the closest to this is where we are. We accept where we are. We're at peace and harmony with everything. You don't have to preach it. You don't have to even vocalize it. You just have to live it. And so I guess basically we should live like all other animals live in harmony. I mean, not all animals are in harmony, but for the most part they are. The ones that usually aren't are the ones that we have influenced or domesticated.
Yeah. So a few things that, well, first, I read a lot of statistics, and it's easy to find statistics from this organization or this organization, but as someone who's often on the front lines, what are you seeing, especially with our kind of megafauna marine life, whales, sharks? Because honestly, I try to be, I'm rather optimistic in many ways, but the things that concern me the most are probably the large marine animals in our ocean, and the loss of them, because taking out apex predators and apex parts of the food chain inside of the ocean, we have no idea what could come afterwards. And what are you seeing? Are you seeing that that things are improving overall as far as shark finning and whales, the killing of whales and marine animals, or what would be your stance?
Well, the oceans are dying and we're killing the oceans, and there's a diminishment right across the board from whales all the way down to phytoplankton. The main concern really should be phytoplankton. We've had a 40% diminishment since 1950, and phytoplankton provides up to 80% of the oxygen we breathe. So if phytoplankton dies or it goes extinct, we go extinct. I don't think people really understand that link, that one group of aquatic plants keeps us alive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the whales and marine mammals and seabirds, they provide nutrients for the phytoplankton in the form of nitrogen and iron from their feces. It's a cycle. Everything is interrelated. Everything is connected. There are three laws of ecology. The first is the law of diversity. The strength of an ecosystem is dependent upon diversity within it. The second is that the law that all the species within that are interdependent. And the third is the law of finite resources. There's a limit to growth, a limit to carrying capacity. So what we as humans are doing is stealing carrying capacity, and that leads to lack of diminishment in diversity and diminishment in interdependence. So those are three basic laws. Any species that has lived outside those three laws have gone extinct, and we will go extinct also. This whole thing really isn't about saving the planet, it's about saving humanity from humanity. I'm always optimistic because I've seen the history of extinctions. There's been 5 major ecological extinctions, and we're now in the middle of the 6th. And what do those 5 major extinction events have in common is that it took 18 to 20 million years on average for the world to recover from those events. So 18 to 20 million years from now, which is a blink of the eye in the history of the planet, everything will be fine.
One thing I think about a lot, and it hasn't really been discussed much at this conference, is the issue of private property. And to me, I think there's certain cultural mythologies that are permeating throughout our entire species that are being perpetuated by what I would call chieftains of the tribe or presidents of these nation states, is the belief that we could even own anything.
There's no such thing as private property.
Right, and it's blowing me away that we are still perpetuating this mythology into our species at such a time of planetary ecosystem breakdown. And I guess I'm under a belief that we can move into a new cultural narrative where private property doesn't necessarily exist in at least in the way that it does now, where there's more open access for everyone. Almost when we loosen our grip on private property, everyone actually has more access to resources that they need, rather than trying to hoard or consume. And this is one of the things I'm going to be speaking about tomorrow is really the overconsumption based on false mythologies in our culture. But I'm just curious on some of your thoughts on these things, on what do you think? Do you think private property will continue to exist for the next few decades? Do you think that we will see a change maybe from our generation causing these things? But I just don't see how it can possibly continue to persist. Or if it does, I don't see the problem getting solved.
Well, I don't see human beings giving up their property that easy. So circumstances will take it. They take away. Floods will take away your property. Earthquakes, volcanoes, they'll take away your property.
Yeah.
Nature will eventually take away property.
Totally.
So everybody's just in temporary possession of something that they think they own.
Right.
But it's not permanent.
Totally. What do you think that another thing that one thing we're a large proponent of is thinking through new paradigms of planetary leadership. I'm at the UN quite a bit, and I live in New York City. And when I first moved to New York, I went to the UN a lot because I thought it was the best place to make the most significant difference. And I've gotten a little bit let down in some ways that I feel like it's a little bit overly bureaucratic. I do think they're doing a decent job in some areas, but I do think we have a lack of streamlined, efficient planetary leadership at this point on our planet. And when we have 196 to 197 nation states all competing for their different agendas, I feel like we're not really seeing leadership on an environmental front in a large enough influential front. And so one thing why we're very interested in blockchain and people like Bill Tye that you were speaking with earlier is that we believe new paradigms of leadership can emerge over this next few decades. Distributed, decentralized leadership, and we're focused on a possible global vote happening in the next decade through blockchain voting, and potentially creating something in line with what would look like an Earth High Council, a council that might actually have more superiority or allegiance than even a nation state. And I guess the reason I'm bringing these up is I just imagine that you've probably thought at least about some of these things. I'm not saying that they will take place, but I do think that there might be worth our action to try to at least get more influence of human utility to fight for the causes that you're fighting for.
Well, it's certainly worth pursuing, but every government is controlled by corporations within it, and the United Nations is controlled by corporate interests too. The United Nations decides who gets to speak and who doesn't get to speak, and that's based on, for instance, I'm not allowed to speak at the United Nations because the Nippon Foundation's made it very clear that I'm not to speak at the United Nations. And in fact, at the last Ocean Day, they not only banned me, they banned any pictures of whales or dolphins so as not to upset Japan because they're a major funder. So the people who are providing funding are the people who are responsible for the problem, so they get to decide who speaks on it and who doesn't.
Well said. And with that, I have two last questions. One is another cultural mythology that is pumped into the human ecosystem is the idea that money rules everything. And obviously a biologist and an earth scientist could explain that energy is the only true transactionary field of nature in general.
Well, bacteria run everything.
Yeah, true. I didn't really think about it through that lens. Do you think that we have the opportunity to maybe upgrade our paradigms around the financial or just the financial system or trading system in general, which is what Bill Tye really fascinated me with last night.
I think we have to find alternatives, and what Bill's talking about is viable alternative. It's certainly worth pursuing because what we have right now isn't working.
Yeah.
So will it work? I don't know, but it's certainly worth trying.
Yeah. And the last question I have, and this is something I struggle with a lot, and I feel like you've probably struggled internally with as well. And I read about a little bit of your separation with Greenpeace, and at times Greenpeace thought you were trying to be too front and center. And
well, that was one writer's
right,
opinion.
Exactly, right. And for me, it's not that I'm ever trying to be front and center to gain attention as much as trying to almost streamline communication. And I think that in certain ways we need Sylvia Earle and yourself are heroes of mine that I learn from, and I have a place to go gather influence from to then direct my actions. And so I just wonder if you could comment a little bit on when to know when to kind of step into the spotlight, not even trying to do it in an attention-seeking way, but doing it in a way that you think it can actually be efficient to creating the solutions that we're all looking for.
Well, if you got something to say, you got to say it.
Yeah.
And so don't be deterred by any criticism or any fear that somebody might disagree with what you have to say. So just come right out and say it. I get accused of being arrogant all the time, but of course I'm arrogant. You have to be arrogant if you're going to take on the arrogance of the human race. So there's nothing wrong with that. You have to get attention to these issues, and in a media culture, how do you get attention? I mean, there's only 4 elements of media. Media only understands those 4 elements: sex, scandal, violence, and celebrity. Every story has one or more of those elements. You got all 4 elements, you got super story. So that's what you have to tie into it. That's what we do all the time. For instance, one of my most successful campaigns was with the wolf killing in British Columbia and the Yukon. And they had the violence in shooting wolves, and they were going to threaten to kill us. And we had a scandal of a politician taking a bribe from the big game hunting organization. So we had scandal, we had violence. So I recruited Bo Derek as our spokesperson, giving us celebrity in the sex part of it. And the place was packed and got incredible coverage because we had scored those 4 elements. This is the nature of media. Trump goes on about fake news and everything, but the one thing that the media is manipulated by everybody. It's manipulated by Coca-Cola. It's manipulated by the political parties. It's always manipulated. So you can either stand apart and watch everybody else manipulate it, or you can manipulate it yourself. And how you manipulate it is with those 4 elements to bring attention to the story. If you got something to say, for instance, you go and say, oh, they're killing whales down in Antarctica. They don't care. Human beings are now going down there, blocking harpoons, putting their life on the line to protect whales. Now you got a story. So it's a story that delivers a message.
I think this is a conversation so much more needed in environments like this, is how to hack into the human psyche for attention, because we really run in an attention economy, and you're really talking about what grabs our attention and maintains it. And those are the things we have to use to then implement the solutions that we want.
Marshall McLuhan, who's a professor of communications back in the 70s, predicted that it will get to the point that you will not be able to be elected president in the United States unless you're an actor or an entertainer. So he predicted Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. And it's going to get worse. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Idiocracy. Well, that's the direction that we're going. Because the media is responsible for that, because the media is channeling that in that direction. It's not what the media covers, it's what the media doesn't cover. And the media doesn't cover important things. They're into sensationalism, they're into anything that's, as they say, if there's blood on the deck, it's a story. If it doesn't bleed, if it bleeds, it leads, that kind of thing. So they're always looking for that kind of stuff, but they're certainly not interested in education. So if you want to educate anybody, you have to fit it into a process. So like a motion picture, for instance. Movies actually educate people more than anything else. I mean, look what Free Willy did for whales, and all these different movies, Avatar and all that. They get a message across in a way that people can understand. I mean, it's just amazing. Last week I saw a picture of an orangutan on fighting a piece of machinery, which is the exact same image that was in Avatar. And what bothers me is that people say, oh, they were really affected emotionally by the film, but nobody really seems to give a damn about the orangutan. Just to continue to buy their palm oil products and everything. And so just trying to get that message across, and you have to use media. I always think the camera's the most powerful weapon that's ever been invented. So if it isn't on camera, it didn't happen.
Well said. The last, just so you know, my focus is turning the International Day of Peace into a planetary holiday, and the reason for that is to try as best we can is to galvanize humanity to focus our intention deeper than we are right now. So every year we put on a larger celebration for the International Day of Peace. The first year we did 100 in New York, then last year we did 1,000. This year our goal is 10,000, and we're pretty sure we're going to hit that. And then next year the International Day of Peace falls on a Saturday, and our goal in New York is to have 100,000 people in 2019. And then by the year 2020, we're working with Governor Cuomo. It's likely to say that he will announce that New York celebrates as a state holiday. But right now there's not a day the entire world celebrates together. And we find that as a problem I think that if we can get the Earth to at least agree upon peace, then maybe we can focus our effort into saving us from extinction, is my hypothesis.
Well, it sounds like one of those losing causes, but again, it's one of those it's a cause worth fighting for.
Thank you. Well, you're always invited, and we will have a huge stage for you if you feel that you want to speak at the International Day of Peace September 21st this year or whenever. And on top of that, regardless of what any government or people think of you, I think of you as one of the greatest heroes I know alive. And
thank you.
I will say, because I know that they can't say thank you on their own, thank you from all of the incredible life that you have saved and preserved and been a voice for that can't be a voice for themselves. And I don't think that there's anything more honorable we could possibly do with our life. And I look up to you in so many ways, and I look forward to continuing to see you. And hopefully after International Day of Peace, maybe I can come be a crewman on your boat for a month or two on one of your boats or something.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.